Hello, and thanks for joining us for this segment of Hoppy Home. Today we're going to talk about how to flavor beers. Specifically, I am working on a stout. It's an imperial stout that is currently barrel aging in a whiskey barrel. I want to add some cocoa flavor, some cacao, so you get that lovely chocolate flavor profile in there, as well as some vanilla, which also goes really well with the oak and with the whiskey. This is what we're going to be doing. So we'll start right in on it. Get a little to begin with. First thing we're going to be using is the organic cacao beans. These are raw, they're not uncooked. So I haven't toasted them at all. It's just going to give a straight chocolate flavor. You're going to get less bitterness and less astringency out of that. And they're pretty good, but definitely go with the organic ones. It's a lot better if you can see that. The second thing we're going to use is vanilla beans. Again, I got the non-GMO style of vanilla beans. You can see they're the full beans. They're super expensive right now. So just be aware of that. That's going to continue happening. They're probably not going to really ever get much cheaper. So those are the two things. The third thing I'm going to use for the whiskey is actually Lafroig. It's very peaty, it's very strong. It's a little bit like licking moss, my wife likes to say, but it's a very good whiskey. It's actually going to go well with the whiskey barrel aged and the darker flavors of the beer. A lot of that peat and mossiness will get sort of lost in it. But it makes a great medium as an alcohol, a high alcohol percentage, to pull the flavors out of the items. So the next thing you're going to need, and the last thing really, is just a jar to put it in. Always smell your jar. Make sure that whatever was in it before is not currently smelling, so that's also important. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is basically just take the beans and try to put them in here as much as you can. Sometimes you miss. And then the next thing you're going to do is pull out all of your beans. While I'm cutting this, and what you want to do is split them down the center, and then each half you're going to scrape sideways to get all the beans and the good stuff that's inside there out into your liquid a little faster. So while I'm doing this, let me explain. The reason that we're doing it this way and instead of putting it in the beer is alcohol makes a really good way to pull out flavors from a lot of different items. You've heard of perhaps tinctures, that sort of thing. They're basically just high alcohol that is able to pull out medicinal properties out of flowers or flavorings, out of herbs, and it is not going to adulter your beer with any bacteria. It's not going to have any particular enzymes. It's basically an inert material that you want to put into a beer that's already been boiled. So you don't want to put in anything that's going to cause off flavors or any kind of post-fermentation, fermentation into your beer, no mold, nothing like that. So basically I've now split the beans long ways in half, and I don't know if you can see into this, but inside of there is basically the goodness. So you just want to hold with one side and scrape with the flat. And you see all the beans that have come off of that. It's an amazing amount of beans just for each one. So we'll just be pulling that in. And again, because the alcohol is high alcohol, you don't have to worry about the contamination of the board or the knives or your hands as you're scraping all of this out, which is good. And this will be filtered through a little screen when it is done. So again, all you need to do, scrape these out pretty quickly. Missed a little piece there. And sometimes you really need to push down on it, but don't cut across it. And so a lot of the flavorings that you can do in beer, I mean, you could choose to put vanilla beans into the beer itself when it sits. You could also choose to put vanilla flavoring, which, you know, you use for baking and that sort of thing. You might want to put it in your pancakes. You might want to put that in there as well. I find that you get a lot deeper flavors and you get a lot stronger flavors by putting actual vanilla bean and the pod as well as the insides into your container. You just get a lot better flavors. You also get a lot stronger flavor. So basically I'm mapping in all of these things into there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down the size of the beans because it's all about surface area. The more area that your alcohol touches on the beans, the more that's going to actually come out. Also, you don't want to throw in a ton of whiskey in there because it will affect the flavor, but it will also affect the will also change the ABV of your beer because this is high percentage. Anything 80-90 proof in there is going to make a difference. So I'm basically going to stir that in there a little bit, get them in there. Then the magic Lafroig on top. Now, the amount that I'm using, this was a bag, a 6-ounce bag. I had 5 ounces left. The vanilla beans in here, there were 5 beans. This is for a double batch. So what I did is I did 2 batches of stout, imperial stout, and that was what I put into my barrel. So that's twice as much. So basically just put it into your jar and close it up, and you're pretty good with that. I mean, you can give it a little swirl, a little shake, and that sort of thing. But really, I'm going to sit it in here for 2 weeks. That's when my barrel aging will be done, approximately. And at that point, all of the alcohol will have pulled the flavor out of the cacao beans and the vanilla beans, and you won't get the astringency that you might have gotten out of the beans if you'd left them for any longer than 2 weeks. I don't really suggest going longer than that. You're going to want this in a room temp place out of the sun, so I'll put it down next to my barrel in the dark down in my barrel aging room. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. Again, so thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it on this segment. We're basically doing this to try to get information out to fellow homebrewers. So if you would join our community, we'd love to have you in it. You can find us on Pinterest and Instagram and Facebook, as well as on my site, which is hoppyhome.co. And we definitely look forward to seeing you. And we'd love to hear back from you. So if you have a chance to do any of this as well, we'd love to hear what your success was or even your failures, because we all deal with that too. So cheers. Thanks for joining us.